Good afternoon, class. Thank you all for coming in and getting your seats. I appreciate that. You've looked at your board words. You got any ideas about what we're going to speak about today? You do? Okay, what do you think? Yep. World War I, very good. I did go over your pretest that we had on your desk today. You did pretty good. I was a little bit disappointed in that you only had 60%. Your high school sophomores, you should be able to do a little bit better, but I guarantee you that after today, you will be solid. What I want to do is start you off with a little PowerPoint lesson. Here, we'll go over that. First of all, we're going to talk about the main causes of World War I. If you notice here, this main is separated. It's M-A-I-N. It's a good reminder that the causes would be militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. So keep that as a handy guide for your test. Those we'll call the powder keg. Those were underlying events. So I've got a short video I want you to see, get your idea about what's going on.
What caused the devastating First World War? You may be aware of the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. This was, in fact, the trigger which set off the war from a number of underlying causes. These were militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. Militarism created an arms race out of competition and fear of neighbouring nations. Germany tried to compete in a naval race with Britain, building more and more ships. Alliances were created to check the balance of power between nations. In 1882, Germany, Austria-Hungary and Italy formed the Triple Alliance. France, Britain and Russia reacted in 1907 by creating the Triple Entente. Imperialism caused another type of competition and disagreement. The British and French empires made Germany jealous as it tried to colonize parts of Africa. Nationalism created the feeling that countries were better than others and promoted the anti-Austro-Hungarian sentiments in Serbia. 7 young Bosnian Serbs, who were part of the nationalist Black Hand, planned to assassinate Franz Ferdinand, heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary. Get your copy of Simple History, World War I, available on Amazon now.
Okay, so class, after watching that video, we knew a lot about events of the past. They are things that happened, and that's what we've been studying most of your school career. But what I want to let you know is that history is actually the study of people. It's the causes, it's the why, if you will, of the things that happened. So if we look at it that way, history becomes a little more fun. History happens all the time. History happened 30 seconds ago. But now we're going to look at this. We're going to see some of these causes. Okay, so militarism. Militarism is a buildup of armies, weapons. Everybody wants to amass armies. They want to be better than their neighbors. They want protection of their borders. They want to create a sense of fear in those around them. So why of this is to always have more than anybody else. We'll move on to alliances now. And when we look at alliances, they are basically, one little guy here, he gets attacked by somebody else. Then his partner that he has an agreement with is going to come in and watch his back. Then somebody else is going to come in. Then they're going to keep falling down. So it's an agreement between two or more countries that they're going to help each other out. One thing to remember is that there were many alliances throughout Europe even before World War I started. That's why it was a powder keg. Everybody was on the cinnamon block waiting for something to happen. Next, there was a sense of imperialism about Europe. Everybody wanted to gain more land. They needed more resources as population grew. They did this through diplomacy and sometimes militarism. So with this buildup, they were able to impress on others their might and make them to succumb to what they needed. Particularly Asia and Africa were places that the European powerhouses, England, they wanted to be. Next, out of all of this, we were coming up with increased nationalism. That's a strong love for your country. But nationalism, it can be healthy, it can be good, but extreme nationalism, when people kind of go over the top, they start to get fanatical. They believe that their country is actually better than the countries around them. They believe their people are so far superior to the other people. They will actually follow the fanatics that lead these countries over the cliff. As you can see, when the countries were starting to separate in Europe, the Triple Alliance and Triple Entente. The Triple Alliance is what we know as the bad guys. It was Germany, Italy, and Austria-Hungary. The Triple Entente was Britain and Russia and France. They were going to watch after each other's concerns. Basically, they were telling each other, I got your back. If one of these move against the other one, we'll come in and help you out. These also were occurring before World War I started. Now, we remember that powder keg, all of this stuff boiling around in Europe at the time. And then we have what is the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand from Austria. They had acquired, if you will, Serbia, and he was a moderate, and he would have actually been a good leader to help unification of Europe. He made a trip down to Serbia to tell everybody, hey, it's going to be okay, we're going to look after you. But Serbia, they had a group called the Black Hand, as we saw from the video. They sent a group of guys up to take care of this. They said, we ain't going to stand for that. So this was actually the spark that set off that powder keg. You can see here in this image, a fellow approaches the Archduke. His name is Gavrilo Princip. He was the hit man, basically, that took place with the Black Hand. He went up, he shot the Archduke and his wife Sophie, and at that point, Austria-Hungary wanted to retaliate. Germany coaxed them on, hey, go ahead, we got your back, based on those alliances. So Germany, though, had a game plan to take care of this. They had the old Schifflin plan. That's their play. That was in existence from 1905. Schifflin had wondered, Germany was isolated, they were surrounded, they were in the middle of France, Russia, and he did not want to get caught in a two-front war. It could be detrimental to their survival. So he came up with a plan to commit most of the troops, 7/8 of the troops. They would go through neutral Belgium and attack France, full force, 6 weeks, turn back around, go after then Russia. As you can see here, documented through, they come down through Belgium, take out France, return back to Russia. 10 years later, we're looking at World War I setting in. They've got a new guy in charge, Moltke. He decides, we're going to amend this. Russia, I'm kind of worried about. I'm not going to commit to Schifflin 7/8. I'm going to leave back some of the troops to just play safe on Russia. But I'm going to go ahead on into France. But with the less troops, France was a little more difficult. Time frame wasn't 6 weeks. They got held up. France took too long. But as he extended, there was poor transportation. He couldn't get supplies. Troop movement was slow. Communications, as he left Germany, communications were poor. Therefore, his plan failed. Now we've got Germany ups its game. They got to say, well, our plan here is not going to work. What else can we do? They decide the sea, shipping, people bringing in supplies to support. The U.S. is supporting Britain. They can't support Germany, but they're going to cut off these supply lines. They decide to up the game. They created U-boats, which are what we know as submarines, to attack silently and deadly under the cover of the water, attack these ships in the shipping zones. Here's an image of a U-boat here playing onto a civilian liner, probably carrying some supplies. Germany decided that they're going to threaten this. They're going to cut this out by having unrestricted warfare, which means they are not going to play by any rules. They're going to take out these supply ships. What happened is this resulted in civilian casualties. It's always a bad situation when people lose civilians. Now what happened here is later on we had a British ship called the Lusitania. It was sailing from New York to Britain. It was supposedly carrying civilians on this journey. It was in 1915. North Sea, which surrounded Britain, was already in a war zone. Germany actually warned civilians not to take this ship because it was going to go through a war zone. Therefore, things could happen. The ship could get sunk. However, secretly, as suspected by Germany, the Lusitania was carrying tons of munitions hidden underground. When Germany sank the Lusitania, almost 1,200 casualties of passengers, and 128 of them were Americans that were traveling. As you can see here, very graphic on the image of the sinking. New York Times carried this, which of course people relied on the Times, and they see here about the ship was being sunk. This is going to increase the public opinion of war against Germany. It's going to up that. But it took them 2 years to actually declare that war on Germany. There happens to be some bias here, which we as historians or history people should be aware of. The bias here, you got two views of what was really, and who was really at fault, who was breaking the rules. This is war, so was Germany applying a natural tactic that to create a way to stop supplies from their opposition? Or you got Britain, the U.S. was sneaking munitions. They were not totally honest that this was a civilian ship. Germany did warn them before they took off, so the casualties were kind of like thumbing their nose at Germany. Well, we don't believe you. Then the civilians, the U.S. people wanted to know, well, how could Germany sink a civilian ship? How could they do something so horrible? All of this was born. Here is a copy of the original warning that was posted by the German embassy. Then, after the Lusitania was sunk, the Zimmerman telegram surfaced. It was a communique between Germany and Mexico. Basically, they were offering Mexico land and financial aid. And the land came from the U.S. possessions that they had taken from Mexico early on, that if Mexico would help Germany as attack into the U.S., they would reward them with giving them back the land and also money. Here's a copy of the telegram that was deciphered by the British troops. The U.S. said, they did what? I can't believe they're going to come in our back door. The Zimmerman telegram, sinking of the Lusitania, unrestricted warfare on the ships. All of this led, in 1917, spring of 1917, the U.S. declared war on Germany. So now that the U.S. is in a war, and it's a war overseas, now that we're in the war, what does this mean for the U.S.? How are we going to supply our troops overseas? How are we going to get them the army, the boats, the munitions? We've not had a built-up army. We had a shift in the need, though. The needs of the country shifted from civilian needs to military needs to a war effort need. The children were able to step in. They took jobs. They helped at the house. A large influx of women joined the workforce. Factories shifted their goals from being supplies for the civilians. They were working on the war effort. As you can see here, women joined factory work. And also with this war, weapons, as you can see, weapons of World War I caused a huge number of casualties, the new scale of violence, anything it takes to win the war. They tried to up it up. They tried to run new defenses. They tried to do new offenses. They worked new weapon systems into combating against those defensive tactics. As you can look, the last bloody war for the U.S. Civil War, they had rifles, cannons, ironclads, balloons. They were the newfangled weaponry systems. As compared to World War I, rifles became machine guns. They had high rates of fire, huge casualties. Cannons became artillery from 1,000-yard range to 80 miles. Ironclads now are battleships. They were armored heavily, and they had long-range guns. Balloons became airplanes. There they could fight from the sky and in the sky. Also in World War I, we brought into play flamethrowers to get people out of the trenches, and chemical warfare. Gas, particularly, was used by Germany on the troops. Mustard gas. They had burns on the skin. They had problems with their lungs. If you can look here, now the battlefields are just devastated with the things that are brought into play. So, in a nutshell, we looked at the summary. People now want more. The game's more costly. Life is devalued. But we have to look. We have to ask ourselves why. Was the underlying, was we just wanting to fight? Were people wanting to fight? Or were there other reasons? Were the alliances the main cause? Were people wanting more through imperialism? There's a lot to that. What I would like you to do tonight for homework, on the website, Weebly website, I want you to go in there. There's 10 vocabulary words to this World War I lesson. I want you to fill out your vocabulary workbook. I want you to use the word, a definition, and draw yourself a picture. It'll help you. We'll include that as part of your study time. And what we're going to do to come, the next lesson will be on life in the trenches. It wasn't all glory to be in the Army. Up to your knees in water all the time, trench foot. We'll learn about some exciting things. Thank you. Have a good day. Clean up your desk. Pick up your paper. See you tomorrow.